Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you guys are well. Happy Friday. Hope you guys have a great weekend ahead. I was just doing some math, guys, and this is how much the SPY is down for the week after the close today compared to last Friday's close on August 4th. The S&P 500 index is down about 10 points. And that's exactly what you traded through this entire week, guys. And if you didn't blow up your account and you didn't do anything stupid, you didn't mess with zero DTEs, or maybe you did, or let's say you just managed your risk really well this week. Congratulations. I think that's a big plus and a win. Even if you got out of this week, just even slightly green, maybe even slightly red, whatever it is, pat yourself on the back, because all you did was you were patient throughout the week. Of course, there were a lot of good scalps in the group. All right. Hats off to Troy doing the futures trading for us and sending out the alerts. But let's just go ahead and review the week. And I think next week I think we're due for a rally. I got that feeling, and the charts definitely suggest something's happening, probably some point in the mid or early to mid next week. So the latest news, of course, this week, all this volatility, CPI came out below expectations at 3.2. Right below expectations of 3.3. Now, what caused a little bit of panic this morning was the fact that the PPI came in slightly above expectations. Today's PPI report on the producer price index was 2.7, I believe 2.4% in line year over year, and the core year over year was slightly higher, okay, 2.4 and 2.7. So that caused a little bit of pre-market volatility. We certainly started off the day looking like we were going to fill that 443 gap, and we actually never did. So that is still a wide open gap, and that is of concern still going into next week. We've been talking about that 443 quite a bit over the last week or a week and a half since this downpour, since this drawdown has started, or since August have started. And we talked a lot about that 443. And I want to recap why that 443 is so important and why the markets are actually hung on to that 443 this week so far. So you look at the Bollinger Bands. All right, on the daily SPY the daily Bollinger Band right at the lows is about 444. All right, so it was important that we at least hold that lower Bollinger Band support. Okay, number two, we're getting really close to the simple moving average 50 at right under 443. That also corresponds with a 4-hour trend line. 443 was the point of breakout. If you guys remember, we were back in early June where we actually rejected 443, if you remember, on June 15th at the peak of this rally here in June. And then it took 2 weeks to come back, dumped it at the 443 level, and then eventually broke out, right? So that 443 number is just absolutely critically important. I think that's where the bulls are have at least tried to step in today. Definitely still a lot of hesitation in the market, given that, you know, over the next 2 weeks, we're going to see another Jackson Hole speech from Mr. Jerome Powell. In addition, next Wednesday, we're going to have the FOMC meeting minutes. Now, what's dragging down SPY and what's up with this action today? Well, quite frankly, it's the Qs, right? The Qs have lost the daily moving average 50, all right, ever since about 2 days ago. On Wednesday was the official loss of the moving average 50, and it's stuck under there. So you have kind of a morning star look here, which is why I'm kind of sensing a little bit of tech rally, at least try to get back above the 368 to 369 level. If we close at some point next Monday, Tuesday, above that 369 simple moving average 50, I think you're going to see a rally in the tech stocks, and at least in the tech sector, because it's been quite overdone. You look at your oscillators, we're completely oversold, right? On the daily, and we are obviously oversold on the SPY daily as well. And this is what's going to, I believe this is what's going to set up the next leg up. It might be painful, right? You look at this, let me give you an example. You know how we just closed below the trend line, even with the little pump today at 44670, we were not able to close above this daily trend line, okay? Because we lost it yesterday and we made a lower low. But look at what happens here, though. Even though we closed below the trend line, we've seen this before since March, right? And that was May 24th. And it takes a while. It may hop back up into the trend line, may have to fight around 448 levels on Monday, Tuesday, but eventually you see the next leg up. If I turn on my oscillators at this point, you see that, even with this dip, it kind of resets and then it goes back up. We are more oversold than we are on the March lows, all right? And we're still hanging around the 445, 450, 444 level at this point. And as you know, seasonality suggests that obviously it's weak. August is weak, and it gets really, really messy, right? Messy in terms of a lot of sideways action, messy in terms of just uncharacteristic drawdowns. So, for example, what do we see this week? And and I really think that Meta and Nvidia was the culprit this week. As soon as on, I believe, what was it, Wednesday? Okay. We held this trend zone on Tuesday, right? And then we completely lost it. And you could tell that that drawdown was abrupt on Wednesday, right? It broke through the trend zone, all right? It came down to fill a gap. Yesterday, there was some rally attempt in the morning, if you remember, to 435 and rejected that trend zone, and Nvidia made a lower low. And Nvidia closed at 408.55, and there are still big gaps down there. Taking a look at Nvidia, they do have earnings in a couple of weeks. However, you're really oversold now. You are more oversold on Nvidia than you are from December 28th, 2022. That was 8 months ago. You can argue the case that that Nvidia is a bloated stock. They don't deserve this kind of price earnings and all that. That's fine. But from a technical perspective, it is oversold. So if the if the tech sector is going to get any type of rally, something's got to give next week to give excitement to Nvidia and draw volume into Nvidia. Another culprit, I think, that drew the Qs down is Meta. All right. Once Meta entered that gap, all right, and lost the 20-day moving average on Wednesday, all right, Tuesday, Wednesday morning, and you see that drawdown, they wanted to fill that gap. And today, finally, Meta filled that earnings gap from July 26th when they reported earnings. So we went slightly below, and Meta obviously closed red today. So if we are going to get any type of tech rally, it's going to have to come from some of these stocks like Meta and Nvidia, Google, Microsoft, Amazon. But if you look at, let's just take a look at Amazon. All right, Amazon's holding that trend line very, very well, and you kind of got this, flag or pennant set up here. If Amazon decides to lose 138, 137, and does not support, you got a gap down here to 131, of course, actually to 130 or right below 130. So, in my opinion, definitely tech stocks are the losers this week. And they're dragging down everything else with it. But your Dow, of course, is green, very strongly green today. You look at, let's go to Google for next week. And these are some of my watches next week, by the way. Holding this particular support here at 129. This was the highs from June 27th. And mind you, Google is still well below all-time highs, still approximately 20% below all-time highs at 150, right, before the split. And you look at this, and it's got to hold this area, right? There, yes, of course, massive gap up here. This is not what you want to see, and that could drag down the Qs a lot more. However, still a green day on Google. I wanted to point out next week also what something you should be watching is the 1 hour Tesla flag set or pennant setup. Sorry, pennant falling wedge setup. This looks very much like SPY. All right, this looks very much like a lot of stocks right now, Microsoft especially, with this kind of falling wedge type of look. Tesla could be very interesting as it continues to hold. Yes, there are lower lows and lower highs. However, once this breaks out, I mean, at least there's could be a 5 to 6 point run to 251.90. AMD is another one. Okay, let's talk about AMD. Daily chart, AMD. All right, double bottom here. Didn't quite actually make it above back into this trend zone. So this is something to watch next week to see if the chip sectors or your semis are going to get any type of relief rally here. You have 4 straight down days on the AMDs, and you've got a small gap above here. If AMD cannot come back into this area, there's going to be more, a little bit more drag on the Qs. Etc. So last chart here, Microsoft is a falling wedge on the weekly now. All right. Yes, it's clear. It actually blew through the gap, blew through the 50 DMA, the 20 moving average, all of it. There's a lot of bearish scenarios for Microsoft, but an increase in volume today, which is important on Microsoft. And Microsoft leads the Qs, by the way, in terms of index weight. So you got to watch your Microsoft next week, because if Microsoft gets going, that could get us the rally that we're looking for on the SPYs. Even Tesla too, right? Going into next week. So not holding much over the weekend, except the September 1 446 calls. I'm up like 10% at this point. And the SPYs are moving up a little bit here in the post hours. So I think, a couple more charts and you guys can have your weekend, and I'll shut up here. All right. Going back to this 4-hour chart, trend chart. Okay. All right. This is what it looks like since March. Okay. Since the March low. So we've been tracking this trend line. Guess what, folks? That trend line today held perfectly, almost to the T. All right. So yes, this is a bounce. It could obviously fade, but you're looking at this 4-hour and you're starting to spot this falling wedge setup going into next week as well. Okay. All right. Any volume, excitement in tech, something. All right. Earnings coming up for NVIDIA, maybe. All right. Since NVIDIA is oversold, this could be a trigger to move back up. All right. We are oversold on the daily and hourly 4-hour timeframes. You name it, we're oversold. All right. Things do not typically stay this oversold for an extended period of time unless sentiment changes or some bad news drops, okay, over the next, 48 hours over the weekend. This 30-minute chart that we've also been tracking, all right? Hang on, sorry, wrong chart. No, that's over here. Okay, here it is. All right, you can see that, yes, yesterday, failed breakout, miserable failed breakout. All right. Tried again this morning, trying again here in the afternoon. There is something happening here, or some type of excitement where this thing can actually break out and squeeze, or possibly, a short cover rally. All right. Once again, next week, no big events in terms of news or data, except FOMC minutes on Wednesday afternoon at 2 o'clock. The week after, I don't know what date it is, but it's going to be the Jackson Hole speech on the 22nd or the 23rd. And of course, the big earnings for NVIDIA coming up on, I believe, what is it? The 22nd? The 23rd. Yes, the 23rd, you'll have NVIDIA, and that's going to be a big mover for the markets throughout to see if, what kind of show NVIDIA decides to put on. So with that, I'll see you guys